Hello, hello, my beauties and bees, and welcome once again to an episode of Cryptic Corner, where we explore the unexplained, the supernatural, the paranormal, and hidden, the mysterious, the alien, the accursed, and the forbidden. I'm your host, Miss Bumblebee, and today we're going back towards my home state. So, yeah, we're going back up north and we're staying in the US. We ran a poll this week to see what you all wanted to see on Cryptic Corner this week, and this is actually what won was the Enfield horror. The other choices were Canada's Ogopogo, the Alkanaka, and the Mihune, which are the Hawaiian Bigfoots or Littlefoots or whatever you want to call them. Of course, the Enfield horror, which is what won, and then the Queensland tiger, which would have taken us back to Terry with the Tantanula Jamie. No, it's Jamie. Jamie here, yeah, that guy. I love him. He's so enthusiastic about Tantanula tigers that makes me want to be enthusiastic about Tantanula tigers too. Jamie, you inspire me. I want you to know that if I ever feel like quitting doing Cryptic Corner, I just have to do a thylacine episode. And every thylacine episode, I will spend at least 5 minutes with Jamie to see what's up and what's going on. He's been covering quolls a lot lately, which we don't really have a lot to say about in the cryptozoological world. But if I do a Breeze Beast series on quolls, we can definitely visit Jamie there that week too. But we're not visiting Jamie this week. Oh yeah, awesome hair. Like I said, I'm doing my goth girl today because we're doing a horror episode. If you look in the title, it says the Enfield horror is what this monster is called. Now there's a channel that I liked and followed since it was really little that we're gonna use today. Well, not really little, since it was kind of small, about my size of my channel, and it's called Bob Gimlin, like Bob Gimlin from the Patterson Gimlin footage, but spelled different. And that's not his real name. He's got it's like an alias. But this is this channel. He does these pencil and charcoal, or maybe pencil and ink, it looks like. Art. He doesn't do the art. He has an artist do it for his stories though, which I think is really cool and a nice aesthetic. But recently he kind of blew up because he went on Joe Rogan, and I don't know if his visit to Joe Rogan was all that impressive. He did a video about it, but he didn't seem all that thrilled with it. But recently, that's something that happened. Yeah, what's it like being on Joe Rogan? This is the guy, and this is like. You hadn't really seen his face before that, besides in the drawings of it. But yeah, all the stories come with little drawings and stuff. And he talks mostly about Bigfoot and Bigfoot adjacent stuff. Is his route of discovery. But he is a bit of a believer, and there was some stuff that was corrected by Trey the Explainer, and in the comments he's like, I don't give a fuck what Trey the Explainer says or whatever, and I was like, what the hell? Trey does a lot of research into his coverage, but he had the Survivor Man on last, but we're not even talking about the Survivor Man this week, because we're talking about the Enfield horror, and it's been a while since he covered that, but we're going to dive back into his back catalog. Into Bob Gimlin's back catalog. This is from 3 years ago, and we're going to cover the Enfield horror from. We're going to critique his take. So let's see. Good morning, or it's good morning from me, Mark Reed, but I guess it's good evening for you.
Hi, I'm Bob Gimlin. The saga of what has come to be known as the Enfield monster, or horror, took place in Enfield, Illinois, in 1973. Like many of the musty corridors of Fortean lore.
This is that 1973. Now that's 10 years before I was born. So, yeah, all you wizards with your little number 2 pencils out there should be able to figure out how old I am. 14 relating to or denoting the paranormal phenomena. When I was a kid, I had a supernatural comic book character team called the 1414. And they would fight supernatural crime and stuff. It was really, really fun. I should make that again.
This particular flap leaves more questions than answers, and the
Flap.
explanations range from the likely to the impossible, though the definitions of those words seem to vary greatly depending.
Likely, probable, impossible, not able to occur. So there's a difference between improbable and impossible. Like, improbable means like there's not, like, okay, here's how Leo will explain it this way. Leo Fearless. I missed you, Leo. Come into my side chat more. I miss you, babe. Is that it is not, it's improbable for a cow to jump over the moon. Not impossible. There's all the things that physically are there for that to be able to occur. You know, whatever assistance the cow can get, but a cow to jump over the moon's not impossible, but it's improbable. For a moon to jump over a cow is impossible because of physics. Yeah, so that's the way I've heard it explained, and I like that. from a philosophy bro kind of perspective.
Depending on who you ask. And before I get into it, I do want to note that the events of Enfield, Illinois, that came to be known as the Enfield Monster or Horror, are not related to the Enfield Haunting, or Poltergeist, which occurred in Enfield, London, some 5 years later. In Enfield, Illinois, on April 25th, 1973, at 10 p.m., Henry McDaniel arrived.
And this is, where this is close to, Enfield, is not any place really in Illinois of prominence. It's closer to, more close to Evansville, Indiana than anything. It's almost a suburb of, or that's not really, well, hold on. Before we get too far into it, let's see where Enfield is. Yeah. And we're going to readjust our compass so that it's right above it. Now, Enfield is this little town here. And Evansville is right there. Evansville, Indiana. And that's more of a city. Just to give you an idea of the location, and as far as Illinois locations, everything else is up north. The closest, even St. Louis is even closer than like Chicago or any of the stuff you think of when you think of Illinois. All this stuff up here, Rockford, Naperville, Joliet, Chicago. Even Springfield is a bit of a ways away, but is the right location? No. We were further down still. So yeah, it's pretty far south and in the middle of the state, closer to Evansville. Back to Bob Gimlin.
Arrived home from working late.
All right.
McDaniel worked in the sale and restoration of antique furniture, but perhaps more importantly, he was a single father of 2 children.
Yeah, but if he's restoring and taking care of that furniture, he needs to make sure he puts some kind of cover over it if he's going to leave it in the back of his truck overnight, because the morning dew will ruin that, what looks like crushed velvet upholstery.
Ages 12 and 15. Upon arriving home, he immediately found it strange that the lights were on and all the curtains were drawn shut. Usually his children were in bed by then. Upon entering the house, he found his 2 children in a state of hysteria. They said something had been trying to get into the house, first by scratching at the door, and then by trying to dislodge a window-mounted air conditioning unit. As you could imagine, McDaniel was skeptical, but he noticed that the air conditioner was in fact out of place.
Nobody plays McDaniel for a fool. I'm just going to narrate McDaniel here and interject, because I don't have anything really to contribute at this point. And the creep kid said, hey, someone outside trying to get in, knocking the air conditioner loose and all this stuff. And McDaniel's like, He thinks it's some kind of prank, so McDaniel's like, oh, let's see what's going on here.
Kids, no doubt energetically, further explained that it had just happened, as in, while he was in the driveway. It was outside with him, beside the house. Obviously curious, McDaniel went to the front door from which he had just entered, and upon opening it, indeed, he saw a creature approaching the steps of the front porch. The next day, McDaniel would tell the Mount Vernon Register-News that the creature, quote, had 3 legs on it, a short body, 2 little short arms.
3 legs? Oh my. That's one of the key features, and that's why a lot of the people will be like, oh, it's a kangaroo. the when you got a monster at your air conditioner, you turn your air conditioner around. Ember, come on. This is Monster Squad Technique 101. First thing you do is you turn your air conditioner inside out. You want to freeze the monster. Friggin' tripod. Exactly, Majestic P. Beckett's tripod. He's a well-endowed cryptid, Mark Reed. You think so? I think it's a rue, maybe? Could be a rue. Good morning, Dave. You can help us figure this out. He's combating global warming. If only it worked that way. Yeah, it's hard to buy shoes when you got 3 feet. That is exactly true.
Coming out of its breast area, and 2 pink eyes as big as flashlights. It stood 4.5 feet tall, and was grayish colored.
Pink eyes.
He said it was heading for the door, as if it was in fact looking for entrance. In a condition of understandable surprise, McDaniel slammed shut the door, and retrieved a .22 caliber pistol from a box in the coat closet. He returned to the door, with the weapon ready. And it was closer now, only a step away from the stairs. McDaniel shot it. He said, quote, "When I fired that first shot, I know I hit it. It hissed like a wild cat." Then he said the impossible visitor lunged off toward a row of trees, covering 50 feet in 3 bounds, so that's 17 feet per bound. McDaniel fired 4 more times.
I mean, right there, the jumping like that makes me think it's kangaroo. It looks kind of like the aliens from like the Day of the World, not the Day of the World, so it's the War of the Worlds, the tripod aliens, right? And they colored the eyes red here, but the description said pink, so I'm like, huh? But it is what it is. I can picture it with pink eyes. Red eyes are kind of overdone. Pink eyes, not enough. You need more pink eyes.
But doesn't believe he hit it, as he only had a handgun, and it bounded into the night, and the night was dark.
Hello, Spooky. And it bounded off into the night with its butt arm. I wouldn't be opposed to having a butt arm myself, like above my like a prehensile tail. Yeah. Prehensile tail with fingers on it would be pretty sweet. Not gonna lie.
Henry McDaniel called the police. And it was just before midnight when 2 state troopers arrived, and though no creature was to be found, they indeed found strange tracks. They described the tracks as similar to a dog, though with 6 pads instead of 5, and that, though indistinct, the tracks did in fact seem strangely spaced, consistent with an abnormal gait, which obviously an alleged tripod would possess. And I'm showing this graphic of a dog because in the past, I've mentioned that dogs have 5 pads. In commentary...
Alright, so he's talking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and thinks that people don't recognize this. People in the comments didn't recognize this as a pad.
Have said that they only have 4, but the bottom pad is considered a pad. Anyway, one of the officers, a man by the name of James Masser, said that McDaniel seemed...
So quote, wait, were all the toes in... You can't just be like, oh, it had 5. Were all the pads in the front? All 5 of the pads? Or was there a weird, like a toe pad in the back? Like the toe was pointed backwards. I need to know more details about it before I make an identification, but it could be... Right now, sounds like it could be a possum. A few different critters, but let's...
Rational and sober. And the police mentioned in their report that indeed they believed something unusual visited the McDaniel residence, and that they were prepared to receive similar calls. The next day, Officer Masser visited other houses in the area.
Like even a bear will have like 5 toes and a foot pad. Yeah. I was just talking about you, Birdie. I was just talking about my magnifying glass. Yeah, that's what it was. To investigate. I can put on my red sunglasses too to go with my attire. I don't actually look through them when I wear them. I look over them, so it's not a big deal. But
yeah, the only corroborating witness he could locate was a
anyway.
10-year-old boy named Greg Garrett. He said that the night prior, at 8:30 p.m., Garrett was menaced by a creature that matched that of McDaniel's. So a couple hours before McDaniel's house was menaced.
This kid be hustling.
Garrett described the creature as possessing grayish slimy skin, short claws, and red eyes. He said that the creature stamped on his foot with its, quote, clawed appendages. It was just about the time that Masser was talking to little Greg when a few local reporters arrived to the McDaniel house. Remember, this was a time when your living room...
This kid's like, yeah, it ruined my shoes. Can I get some new shoes, Mom?
Police scanner was better than anything on the tube. Press and, quote, experts were apparently working under a theory that McDaniel saw a kangaroo. A 4-foot-tall kangaroo.
Aw.
All done. Video over.
Thanks an awful lot for listening. Yeah.
But seriously, to be fair, the notion that he saw a kangaroo is almost reasonable. But personally, I would put emphasis on the word almost.
I will say, though, that of animals that fit this description, you could do a lot worse than a kangaroo. Hold on, I want to check something. There we go. Look at that. Pink eyes and everything. What do we think? What do we think? I'm going to bring you over in just a second. So make sure that, yeah. All right, here we go. So we are going to say pink eye. Ta-da! Look at that. Look at that. What do you think? Is this the Enfield horror? Ooh, ooh, ooh. Look at that. Got the pink eyes and everything. What do we think? Maybe. Maybe, baby. Actually, I'm going to take these off because I did my makeup really good this morning and I want to show it off. So, we're going to zoom in on your little pink eyes and pink snoot. Look at that. I think, could it be a match? It could be. It could be. All right, let's go back to, Enfield's not exactly known. It's not prime kangaroo territory, right? But we have videos of kangaroos all over the Midwest. They're here. There's feral kangaroos that live in the Great Plains, mostly in the South. But I'm not ruling anything out. But Central Illinois is not prime kangaroo habitat, as we mostly know. Kangaroos live down here. This is Australia, and some tree kangaroos live in here too. But it's a long journey, so people have to help them along the way. So people bring kangaroos to menageries, to private shows, like traveling circuses, and people come in and pay money to look at them. Some people pay money to pet them or feed them a celery stick or something. Regardless, kangaroos get brought to the U.S. and sometimes get loose. Yes, we did a whole episode on phantom kangaroos. Hold on. I'm going to drop a link to it. Yeah, there we go. It was last February, so it's been about a year ago. So yeah, there we go. And I'm going to drop this so that we can see. It's not even like, there's no doubt when you look at the videos, that's a real kangaroo that people are citing. It is very clearly a kangaroo. It's got to be an escaped pet or from a menagerie or something, but it's a feral kangaroo. There you go. Yep. All right. So, yeah, they can compete pretty good in our environment. They travel really well across vast open lands, and the Great Plains has plenty of that to offer.
According to the skeptic, at least. It would explain why the creature had 3 legs, as kangaroos use their tails as something like a third leg, and not just for balance like most animals. A kangaroo would also explain the claws, and the observation that the creature's arms stuck straight out at the shoulders. And it would obviously explain...
I don't know why he's so naysay about the kangaroo ID. I think it's a pretty good ID.
Being able to cover 50 feet in 3 bounds. Also, I guess, I would assume that part of the reasoning was that if it was a kangaroo, then it was an escaped or abandoned pet, and therefore may feasibly try to break into a house if it only knew how to get food from people. and kangaroo tracks are certainly unique, but nothing about them is...
Yeah, this doesn't look six-toed, though. Kangaroos really only have the two toes. Kangaroo feet are kind of weird, but they have this shit going on, too, when they get going. It can look really weird, because they put their fingers on the ground when they're moving slow, but when they're moving fast, it's just going to be these toe tips, these two. It's going to look really weird, but it's not going to look like six paw prints, I'll tell you that.
Six-toed. However, McDaniel kind of had the ultimate response and said that when he was in the army, he was stationed in Australia, and that at the base he stayed at, the kangaroos acted like pets. So he was quite certain that he did not see one. The small town life was obviously a buzz.
But does he know that there's different kinds of kangaroos too? There's tree kangaroos, which do tend to look a little bit different and have their own sort of bizarre stance and stuff. Let me see, pull up a picture of one. Where are you, tree kangaroos? There you are. Trying to find one where you can see its like tail and stuff too. There you go. But not where it looks like it's. Yeah, that'll do. Let's open that one. I won't keep you guys in suspense any longer. Open image. A new tab. Okay, so this is what a tree kangaroo will look like. A little bit. A little bit different. Yeah. Let's see. Let's try to open that one. I didn't like that one because it's so freaking blurry. This one's blurry too, though. Anyway, so that's what they look like. They look like little weird little men, I guess. That's the way to describe them. Anyway, I'm not sold on the kangaroo theory, but
tell of this strangeness, particularly because McDaniel, the antique dealer, veteran, and father of two, was not known to be a joker, prankster, or anything less than a reputable and decent human being. And apparently, no one had any reason to doubt that he was anything other than a competent observer. One could argue that he was, in fact, a competent observer. Because if he was, then the town had damn good reason to be interested. 2 weeks later, on May 7th, McDaniel called a radio station based out of Kokomo, Indiana. McDaniel said he saw the creature yet again. This time, it was moseying down some abandoned railroad tracks near his house. He said he didn't shoot at it, though he could have. He described it as the same as his initial...
It does get kind of concerning when it's the same dude seeing it all the time. Yeah, that's where it starts to get iffy. But the kid's seeing it, but I think the kid is just talking out his ass, trying to get shoes. I think the kid actually confesses. But
encounter.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
In a hurry. WWKI's news director, Rick Rainbow, arrived on the scene. Strangely enough, he and his cameraman saw what they described as, quote, an ape-like figure walking around an abandoned building. They weren't prepared to film yet, but they followed it to the best of their ability. And though the creature never came into frame, they captured
ape-like creatures. There's more than one monster now. There's competing menageries of monsters in Enfield today. I'm gonna let this play for a minute. I'm gonna go refill my coffee. And it should just take me just a minute, and I'll be right back.
bizarre audio, like a woman's scream and baby laughter. As far as I can tell, to my disappointment, the audio has never been uploaded to the internet, or even digitized. But a few years after the audio was taken, cryptozoologist Lauren Coleman acquired the footage and audio, and I suppose it remains in his collection. So I have no way to play the audio for you, or even to listen to it myself. But I suspect the audio is quite chilling, knowing the context. The footage is of the two men walking through the woods. And I'm sure that everyone and their mom would know exactly what's making the call, but only a small percentage of the lot would be correct. 2 days after Rick Rainbow saw his ape-like figure, he met with McDaniel in the studio for an interview. He stuck to his resolution that the subject in question was something aberrant. That evening, the night of May 10th.
I like that name though, Rick Rainbow. Sounds really authentic, right? Sounds really... Monsters attract monsters, you think so? Now, this is like one of the first things that Lauren Coleman ever did was investigate this. It's sort of his break into the cryptozoology scene.
Police responded to gunfire in the forest. They found a posse of 5 men, armed to the teeth and drunk as skunks. The posse said that they had just had a close encounter with the monster, and that they were this close to blowing it back to Mars. The men were charged with hunting violations, and were told that they would be arrested if they didn't vacate, which they did. The White County Sheriff's Office dismissed that they were doing anything other than partying, with guns, and that they would have been doing the same thing whether or not there was a monster. And monster...
Yeah. Every small town in Illinois has those guys that party with guns and alcohol.
Not. It sounds like a good way to spend the night. All sorts of out-of-town and strange people flooded the area, though it doesn't seem that McDaniel...
I don't know if it's a good way to spend the night. I don't recommend anybody spend the night with guns and alcohol. Those are not two things to be partying with at all together. You can do one or the other. One or the other.
Interacted with many of them. It tried to come into the McDaniel home on April 25th, and he saw it on the railroad tracks on May 7th. The evening of May 8th was when Rick Rainbow saw his ape-like figure and captured the screams, and the Monster Hunters incident was on May 10th. Monster Hunter, in quotes or otherwise. And apparently, that was quite enough for one Mrs. Garrett. Because on May 15th, an allegedly contrite, and no doubt supervised, 10-year-old Greg Garrett phoned researchers...
You are implying that yourself, that it was supervised. His mom made him do it. No doubt supervised. That's your inference.
From Western Illinois University. And he said he'd made up the whole story of the Phantom Shoe Stomper. He said that he just wanted to, quote, tease Mr. McDaniel and have fun with out-of-town newsmen. Both of which are little sins for a 10-year-old. And on that note, if you're a self-respecting 10-year-old boy and a policeman stops you to ask if you've seen a 3-legged monster, you just say yes.
That is true. If you're a 10-year-old anybody and somebody asks if you've seen and a cop asks if you've seen a 3-legged monster, you're supposed to say yes. Everybody knows that.
Those are the rules. Also, I guess he mentioned that he wanted new shoes, which is really quite entrepreneurial for a 10-year-old. Or anyone, really. As far as I can tell, that's the bare bones.
Did he get his shoes? We don't ever find out about it.
Of the Enfield monster flap. Okay, so that was a lot of stuff to happen in a short amount of time. So I'll summarize the timeline for you. First is the initial sighting, as would make sense. That's the night that McDaniel came home to find his children frightened. The night he claimed to see what many would call impossible. Then there's young Greg's account. Then McDaniel's second sighting. Then there's Rick Rainbow.
I mean, if you can mislead the cops without arguing or without lying to them. Like, if they ask which way you saw the person go, you can make them sit there and clarify what person they're talking about, all these sorts of stuff. I prowled the mountains next to Skinwalker Ranch for almost 40 years. Never saw a cryptid or UFO. Did see the weather change in a heartbeat, though. That sounds pretty lit, John Hudson. I am the 3-legged monster, says Chris Mallard, the damn network. Are you now?
Bo's sighting of an ape-like figure and his audio capture of what sounded like, quote, a woman's scream and baby laughter. And then the Monster Hunters, in quotes or otherwise. As you could imagine, the skeptics have no shortage of explanations, which would make sense.
That's me. I'm the skeptics. Yes, the zoological approach to this. Let's see what we can figure out.
Because skeptics are remarkably consistent in that regard, and it seems that the prevailing skeptic argument is one of fear-induced hysteria. Those subsequent sociological papers and their peer-reviewed and...
A critical examination of the social contagion image of collective behavior, the case of the Enfield monster. We can pull that up here. Let's see. A critical examination of the social contagion. There we go. Is that it? Yep, I got it. Okay, we got the paper. We've got the paper. Abstract. The paper makes an initial statement regarding the conceptual and empirical utility of the social contagion image as posited by Blummer and Clapp. Their position is then criticized on the basis of its assumption that unverified and unusual sensory experiences, mobilization processes, and mass preoccupations are equivalent and undifferentiated products of social contagion. Further, the social contagion approach is unable to adequately account for differential participation in these collective behavior events. Most of these problems stem from the assumed discontinuity between collective and institutional behavior embodied in the social contagion perspective. An alternative approach is posited, which suggests that communication processes available of the population for participation in institutional demands provide a more adequate explanation of differential participation with respect to unusual sensory experiences, mobilization, and mass preoccupation. A case study of a monster sighting in a rural community is presented and examined from the alternate perspective. And this theory goes into why different people see different things when they have a monster encounter. It's why everybody who travels down their white tunnel when they have a near-death experience gets a different personalized version of the events.
Prestigious pedestals have called it many things because that's what they do. And I guess their argument is that McDaniel came home late, and that the combination of his children's fright and the messed with air conditioner drove him to such a terror that he was no longer capable of rational.
Now, you got the little prankster kid across the street, too. Do you think that maybe he had something to do with it? He's out there messing with your air conditioner?
Observation. And that when he opened that door, he was so further driven to cataclysmic fright by a kangaroo, deer, or dog that he perceived something ordinary as something impossible. Case closed. First of all, that's not at all what McDaniel actually said happened. He said that he thought it was funny that his kids were so freaked out over nothing, because they were new to being left home alone due to their age. He thought they just had the jitters, and I can certainly see why an adult parent would find that humorous. But he said that even the messed with AC unit only made him curious, not afraid. So it's not like he opened the door to investigate.
I want to hear his actual description, though, like his word for word, what he saw.
In a state of panic that could result in a misidentification or an overly imaginative response. He opened the door expecting to see a dog or something. He was in the mindset of dispelling his kid's
Did he describe it as an animal or as a person?
Notion, not proving it until he suddenly was. The skeptic's claim of some type of panic-induced misremembrance is half-cocked, particularly when considering
The McDaniel guy, I'm not saying necessarily that he was lying. I just don't, I need to know what he saw, what he described. The kid I know was lying. That kid I don't trust. And I don't trust that the kid didn't have anything to do with this either at this point in the story.
The two police officers filed in their reports that he was, quote, rational and sober. Because if he was insane enough to confuse a kangaroo with this, one would...
But you keep showing pictures of the kangaroo up in this observational pose instead of how they stand most of the time, which is not like that. They have more forward-leaning.
Would think that he would still be in a state of extreme, exaggerated agitation when the police arrived. And perhaps now's the time to mention that he called the non-emergency number. And you know, the skeptic's point here is one of those things that kind of bothers me on a weird level, unrelated.
Wait. Okay, hold on.
Cryptozoology or anything like that. The fear-induced misidentification theory bothers me because, I guess before I judge anyone, I tried to put myself in their shoes.
But you don't... See, this is where you don't put your own anecdotal experiences and what you've taken away from other people's reports into their... You don't put yourself in their shoes. We look at statistics. That's what you're doing is like sort of a confirmation bias. We have to look at a collective number of reports in mass hysteria cases and how things that you'll notice about the story is that the creature changes appearance and gait and everything. The further away from the root of the story we get. And that is whether with McDaniel's case, what he saw as an individual, we don't have a lot on, but we do have the way the story unfolded, right? The way things changed over time, the way different accounts are perceived differently. You have the Enfield monster book of Mark compared to the book of John. When you're looking at these different cases in comparison of what the person claims to saw, what sort of phenomena took place. Now, this first account could be a kangaroo, right? And then a lot of the stuff that you're adding in there from the drawings and things are based on the kid's report, which is the gray slimy skin and all that stuff. So you have ad hoc onto the McDaniels report to make it so McDaniels couldn't saw a kangaroo because you've added stuff on from what we already know is a known liar at this point.
And I don't care if I was quaking in my boots and shaking like a leaf with the daylight scared out of me. There's no imaginable way I'm going to mistake a dog, or even a kangaroo, for something like this. Never. And to me, I guess that's more laughable than
was his report something like that? His report was just something with 3 legs and 2 arms and pink eyes. That's all that I heard so far from him. The rest of this description comes from that kid.
Notion of any cryptid. So that's just one of the reasons why the skeptic argument bothers me. There was no mistaken identity here.
Because you don't understand, like, group or mass hallucination or whatever. You don't understand how those things work. But it is a real phenomenon. It's a psychological phenomenon that is well documented way back. You had, like, when was the tarantula dance thing that happened? Someone would get bit by a tarantula and think that one of the symptoms was that it would cause you to dance, and the dancing would be contagious to people around you. And it really happened. People really did break out in mass dances because somebody thought they were bit by a spider, and that's what the symptoms should be. And people did that for decades. So you don't have to understand the psychology behind it for it to actually be a thing. The speaking in tongues in a church is a thing that happens. People see Mothman. People see all sorts of UFO sightings, ghost sightings. They're all linked to the dancing plague. Yes, exactly, Jason Jacoby.
They just don't have the nerve to call him a liar, and that's because there's actually no reason to believe he was lying. To call this a case of mistaken identity, to me, is nonsense. Maybe what I'm trying to say is that the skeptics may as well just suck it up, Buttercup, and call him either stupid beyond reason, insane, or a liar. Because that's what they're really saying. One of those things. But of course, the skeptic's problem is that
you could just be misidentifying them, Bob. It's fine. It doesn't have to be. None of the answers have to be malicious. No one has to be like, you're calling him stupid? You're saying he's insane? Are you calling him a liar? None of that has to be true. You can be like, I think that you may have misidentified this animal, misjudged its size. There's all sorts of features that could have been exaggerated in his memory. Every time you think of something you saw, especially something you saw fleetingly, your brain is rebuilding that experience from scratch. It's not like actually has a stitched image of what you saw. You recreate it in your mind every time you think about it. And every time you think about it, it's a little bit different, a little bit more off than what it was originally.
No reason to believe that he was any of those things. And though I generally take community opinions with a grain of salt, it's at least worth a mention that the residents of Enfield regarded McDaniel as an involved father, which is notable because a single father was more rare back then. A widower, a hard worker, quiet, and certainly not known for his sense of humor. So because McDaniel was not
salt of the earth means that you're not known for your sense of humor. You can't be salt of the earth and have a sense of humor too. Play pranks. And it doesn't have to be the one playing pranks. Somebody could be playing pranks on him. A tired dad coming home from work.
frightened at all by the encounter, and because the police found him sober and rational, and because he was absolutely not known for this kind of behavior, I'll opine my skepticism toward the skeptic's opinion. And plus, just again on the misidentification
I love kangaroos.
thing, he shot it. And if he shot it, he aimed at it. And if he aimed at it, he saw it. And if he met his mark, which he claims to have, then one would think he saw it clearly. You know, You don't get your gun for a kangaroo, particularly if you're familiar with kangaroos,
You might get your gun for a sickly kangaroo, though. And it's like lurching out of the dark at ya.
which McDaniel was. In summation,
What did he describe? I mean, sure, he can say it wasn't a kangaroo, but what did he describe? You keep going off the kid's description instead of the guy's description. The guy's description just said it had pink eyes and it was had 3 legs and 2 arms. That's all that I saw. And the only thing I can think of is a kangaroo, and an albino kangaroo would fit the bill.
and I guess just in my opinion, there's really nothing to suggest that McDaniel saw anything other than what he saw. Except for the fact that what he saw was impossible, but I try not to give that word too much thought. And I guess that's my argument for
But you're not going off what he saw. Again, you're going off what the kid made up.
McDaniel sighting. Other than that it isn't, quote, possible, there's really no reason to disbelieve him, or regard him as anything other than a competent human person with eyeballs. I suppose next is little Greg. I hope you're still keeping on, Greg. Let's see, if you were 10 in 73, then you were born in 63, which means you're 58 years young. And just maybe you're out there listening.
This was
Life
3
is
years
short
ago,
for all
so
of
he's
us,
61
but it's not
now.
really a fair distribution down the line. Anyway, his chapter likely shouldn't be taken with too much merit, because he specifically called a university to confess, though it's worth noting that seems to have been his mother's doing. And I don't know about you.
Where are you getting that from? That's your inference. You made that decision that he had his mother made him call. I'm not saying she wasn't involved, or anything like that, but the notion that she made him confess is
can recall apologizing for things that I didn't do from when I was about that age, and no one believed me because I was just a dumb kid. And I can only imagine a prudent, small-town Indiana 1970s mother, shocked and appalled that her son got mixed into this cluster, and I see how she may be determined to try and make it right. In short, we're likely seeing a forced confession here, and anything is possible.
a forced confession. Yes, he's under duress.
Suspect that such a call would have been made, whether or not Greg actually saw such a creature. However, even if he did indeed have an encounter, I have no doubt that the shoe stamping element was elaboration, and with motive, which is kind of great, because that detail just doesn't make a lot of sense, as it seems.
That I think a 10-year-old can puts their E's the right way. I hope by the time you're 10, you're not making backwards E's. But
Seems unlikely that a clawed appendage could shear through his shoe without damaging his foot, and it also seems unlikely that a boy would allow himself to get so close to the creature without retreating, and failing that, said boy would probably need to be held down with force.
And the 3 toes is your invention too, I think, because your artist's invention, because I believe that the quote was it had 5 fingers on each foot. Well, because you said 6 pads with a palm pad.
And Greg said the creature didn't hurt him. But still, if you know anything about kids, you'll know that one false part does not invalidate the rest. Indeed, the boy cries wolf, but that doesn't mean there wasn't one. So technically, I think we have to dismiss Greg's sighting as nothing. But what can I say? I don't find it entirely unlikely that he saw something, and then he ran with it with vigor, as is always the way to approach life. We'll likely never know little Greg.
Adding your own flair in there that maybe he did see something when he says he didn't. He said, I didn't see this. And you're like, oh, maybe you did, though. Maybe you did.
Side of the story for certain. But in my opinion, a 10-year-old in 1973, with the wisdom to, quote, have fun with out-of-town newsmen, is no doubt a wise man today. But I think we have to call Greg's encounter iffy at best. And I suppose next is Rick Rainbow. He spoke with McDaniel the day before his sighting. And of course, just to muddy the water, he didn't even see the McDaniel creature. He saw an ape-like figure.
Yeah, this one's completely different. Maybe they had somebody in a costume messing with the newsman. I don't know. But
Walking behind an abandoned building. And according to Mr. Rainbow, they weren't ready to film yet because they wanted to wait for nightfall for the sake of cinematic suspense. But what they saw occurred in broad daylight. And though he and the cameraman never filmed or even saw the creature again, they followed it and picked up audio of a wailing sound. And like I said, it's unfortunate I can't find the audio to play for you
I feel bad for him if that was a real Bigfoot. He's like walking down and say, "Are you?" And people mistaking him for the 3-legged monster that was attacking people's houses, and he gets accused of that. And he's like, "I didn't even do anything. I'm just going to the local apple orchard or whatever." And people are like, nah, it's him. Get him, boys.
Indeed, to hear for myself, but I imagine it's eerie and undefinable. And even though some people would be able to, quote, prove what the sound is, that wouldn't make much of a difference to those who could prove it was something else. So are we to believe that Rick Rainbow had a Bigfoot sighting randomly during a monster flap? Maybe. Perhaps fitting for a man named Rick Rainbow, but as it goes for strangeness, when it rains, it pours. Some people may go so far as to say that doorways open between places, and that for reasons unclear and
Oh, you're just gonna go with it. Oh yeah. So Rick Rainbow, he did have an encounter. They all did. All this was real because there was a interdimensional portal or something.
perhaps uncomfortable, things can come and go from them, and even bring people with them.
Why are you still
And that's
with
never been my technical
visitor?
opinion on the matter, but I certainly don't know what can't be known. Because Rainbow was steadfast in his conclusion, and because he at least picked something up on audio, I think there's decent enough reason to at least consider his sighting. Why not? Besides, a woman's screaming and a baby's laughter are a bit on the nose for what has been universally described for thousands of years, with no sign of abating. And then finally, what of the monster hunters? Well, see, again, it's so easy to just...
Yeah, those are just, yeah, it's so easy to say, hey, when you have a monster sighting, this is what happens. The local townies get all wild, and once you get enough people liquored up at night, they go out and decide to hunt a monster. This happened in a really close monster sighting in Louisiana, Missouri. The Momo monster, same deal. They had people out in the woods with guns looking for it.
just hand all of this over to the skeptic, after the fact. But who is to say? If indeed Rainbow reportedly saw an ape-like figure and heard its screams, something that's been seen countless times before, and if McDaniel saw something impossible on 2 occasions, then perhaps a group of men went on the hunt, and maybe the feeling was mutual. You know what they say about looking into the darkness. Sometimes it looks back. And honestly, having recently been a younger man, I can say they would have likely been drinking no matter what was going on. Because even if the police showed up and 100% believed that the group of men had
Yes, a bunch of young men in a small town. Usually there's beer involved, for sure.
just encountered something otherworldly, what were the police supposed to say? An armed posse just encountered a monster in the woods, but don't worry, theirs is only the 5th sighting, so no reason to get excited. The police would no doubt scoot them out of the area regardless of what had happened. And in no way would the police be inclined to validate the story and endanger the public's health and state of mind. And this next point, too, I usually take with a grain of salt, but I do think it's important to keep in mind that this area is not one where people are known for their extroversion.
Oh my gosh, that looks just like the main street back home. Small town, all the windows busted out in the upper floor windows, but the people who own the buildings can't afford to get them fixed. Sometimes they'll board them up.
And just because the public witnesses were limited doesn't mean that they were, in fact, the only witnesses. It's easy to see why a more conservative, psychologically conservative, community may be tight-lipped about such happenings. I've definitely mused over this with Bigfoot. Is California actually a Bigfoot hotspot? Or are Californians simply more likely to be open about such things? Because remember, seeing a Bigfoot is less than half the battle as far as the making of a report is concerned.
You know, if I saw a Bigfoot, I don't even know if I would report it to the authorities. I don't think anybody would believe me, so probably hams or perhaps Blue Ribbon. Back then, yeah. Maybe some PBR.
Unpopular opinion. I'm actually not too naive. And these 5 incidents are not particularly compelling for any one reason or another. But the skeptic's argument is just so silly. There's no reason to believe McDaniel lied. No books, no movie deals, only 2 interviews with small
No, I didn't say McDaniel lied.
newspapers, and a local radio show. And perhaps he became interested in the paranormal / extraterrestrial discussion, but I can find no evidence of it. So maybe, just maybe he in fact saw something, quote, not from here. But of course, to the truth makers, he saw a kangaroo. And though clearly clever, the kangaroo theory has a big problem. I don't care if you'd never heard of kangaroos, never saw one, never read about one. This is not something terrifying that you get a gun for. Strange, sure.
Pink eyes, though. You're looking at a regular kangaroo, not like an albino or a lewistic kangaroo.
But not entirely alien.
Yeah.
Not unrecognizable on all counts. And perfectly, McDaniel was familiar with kangaroos, and he said a kangaroo it was not, which you'd think wouldn't need to be said. Like if I saw this, and then some sociologist from the university told me that I just saw a kangaroo.
That's not what he said he saw, though. That's what that kid saw. Again, you're flipping through the cards and pretending that one person saw what another one saw. The other people saw an ape man. Like, get it together.
I don't even know how I would respond. He said it closed a distance of 50 feet in 3 leaps. For some context, that's 17 feet per bound. Kangaroo and deer can easily hit 25 feet horizontally. Some rabbits can hit 9 feet, and an average house cat can hit a distance of anywhere between 5 and 10 feet. So at least in terms of size, in regards to the creature's physical capacity, his description makes sense in the world we know, and most...
I'm pretty sure some dogs can probably make that in 3 leaps. Pretty dang sure.
...understand. And I've read through a lot of stuff that cites this entire incident as an example of hysteria, social contagion, collective behavior, and, quote, an extreme instance of suggestibility.
See, your whole thing is that I reject this field of science. Why is it all so often the response that people give? I just reject the science. I just reject this field of science because it disagrees with what I believe should be the truth about this. You see it on all fronts. Every time I run into this type of argument, it's always this science denial that if the collective research on this topic gives all points to something you don't like, you're just like, oh, well, I don't believe it. And it's the same thing with gender. I mean, I hate to bring that up in the middle of a monster show, but people do the same thing. I just reject the science behind human genders. It's ridiculous. You're just like, oh, well, in that case, if that's what the science says, then I just don't agree with the science.
And this is admittedly one of the few times that I'm strangely proud of being less than skeptical about such things. Quite honestly, I'd be willing to bet that something strange was going on before I'd bet that this was all a wayward kangaroo coupled with a bunch of sociology words. An extreme instance of suggestibility.
That's what it is, rejection of sociology. Thank you, Bob, for clarifying. Yeah, it's the rejection of the psychology behind the study of sociology that we've had for the last the last couple of centuries, at least a few decades.
The stuff some people will believe. Like I said all the way back in the beginning, this is just a small chapter in the sordid world of the unscrupulous. If I had to find some corroboration with another chapter of the cryptid verse, it would likely be the chupacabra, simply because they're both anomalous and defy categorization.
Well, I agree with that for the Puerto Rican chupacabra, not the American Southwest chupacabra, which is a mangy coyote or fox.
As a whole, and they can't really be linked into anything within the realm of that which is understood in any meaningful way, even though I'd argue that our understanding is less understood than most would admit. Also, both the chupacabra and the Enfield monster don't have much of an origin story or historical background. One day, they just became. This was my take on the Enfield monster, a case that is frustrating because it seems unlikely we'll ever know what really happened one way or another. But there's nothing to me that screams hoax, and certainly nothing to scream misidentification. And perhaps the strongest...
Why not? Do you ever accept misidentification, Bob?
...lesson to learn from this case is just how quickly the skeptics rallied to a conclusion that made just as little sense as the alternative, in my opinion. Anyway, I encourage you to like the video because that really helps me make more of them, and subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, thanks an awful lot for listening.
So yeah, this was Bob Gimlin. Let me know if you liked responding to him. I used to really love him, and some of the stuff he's made more recently is sort of frustrating though. He's like really leans into like the I'm just a hard-nosed believer about stuff, and it's like, dude, come on. But we're not gonna have time for that. I had another video about it, but we're not gonna have time for it. But we do have time for... Not that. We do have time for this. Alright. And this is a person visiting the location. 2021.
Now, it is interesting to note that a very famous cryptozoologist was called to the scene to investigate. He was very young at the time. His name was Loren Coleman. When Loren came out, he investigated the surrounding areas and took...
Did we miss something?
His name was Loren Coleman.
Okay.
When Loren came out, he investigated the surrounding areas and took pictures. He also believes he heard the scream of the
And this is like in the height of summer.
Enfield horror, as it sounded kind of like a banshee cry. Now, according to the account, the creature came from back there,
Hey,
saw Greg Garrett playing
my
in this
bunny's
yard,
here.
made its way over to the boy as they locked eyes. Then the creature pounced on his shoes, tore into them with its claws.
But the kid said this didn't even happen, so why are we even covering it? I mean, I guess knowing where it happens is important.
Shredding them. Guess he didn't like Nikes. Before making his way over to the McDaniel neighbors.
It's the moon.
Well, I hate to say this right now, but my phone is giving me problems, so I can't go live. I'm currently here on the L&N railroad tracks in Enfield, Illinois. This spot right here is where Henry McDaniel looked out his bathroom window and saw the creature on the
see the
railroad
green
tracks. This is the
silos
exact
there.
spot. How do we know that? See that white structure over there?
Uh-huh.
It's the image of track 2 in the online pictures.
Yeah, but you have to trust the online pictures of the right location, too.
Now, across the way, we got a chance to speak to Brent. Great guy, showed me around. This is his new property. He owns his property. This is where the house was. So the window, the bathroom was way back there. But Henry McDaniel Sr. could see the creature on the tracks even from that distance at night. No problem. It was just wandering around in these tracks here, wangling around, almost like it was trying to maneuver.
Working at Domino's. Is my audio bad?
So I'm going to be out here for a lot longer tonight, with
Let me
chances
know.
of maybe,
I tried to fix it,
well, seeing something
I
in
am a
the
little
bushes,
echoey.
seeing something come at me.
but that's because this room's
I don't
open
know.
up like that.
But lucky for me, I'm not alone. I've got neighbors across the way if I need help. Once again, I do apologize.
I did
for
work at Wendy's in high school, though.
not being able to go live. This really is frustrating, but
Oh,
for some
my
reason
hair.
my phone
My hair, I
went into
gotcha.
the dreaded yellow
No, it's
code
my goth girl. It's my goth girl look. My vampire girl. Yeah.
of check for SD card, and I can't get it to reboot. So once I get back to my cabin, maybe I can actually try to reboot it with plugging it in.
Yeah, your technical stuff's not what we're here for.
This is quite the mysterious place if you ever get a chance to come out here. For those who've come out looking for the Enfield horror, I'm sad to say, you're wrong. You came to the wrong location. I came to the right house, found the right people. Let's continue to walk,
Ooh, you think you're
This
got
way
it
along the
all
tracks.
figured out, buddy?
see if we can hear anything or see anything. There's a lot of beautiful fireflies out here at night.
Not a lot of fireflies anywhere anymore.
Very small village.
Yeah.
Enfield, town of Enfield. Technically it's a village.
Yeah, we're gonna go check it out. Don't worry. We're gonna go check it out. Okay. Enfield. Now, one thing about Enfield that's interesting, yeah, very small town, so there's not a lot of places we can get down and actually look around. We're just the main drag here going through like North First Street. It looks like that's it. North and South First Street. And none of the other towns have any Google Earth going through them. So we're going to start down here by the railroad tracks. Yeah. Here's the railroad tracks going through. If you drop down right here, we're right in the middle of a construction site. Isn't that wonderful? But there's the tracks running through, and we know that he saw, or allegedly saw, claimed that he saw the creature on the railroad tracks. Now, the railroad tracks go up and around here, right? And these are the grain silos that he was seeing. So I think that he was somewhere around here. There's a street that runs down through the woods here, Cherry Street, but we can't get down onto it. But it goes down through here and then crosses the railroad tracks. And I want to say that he was somewhere along this stretch right here. But, you know, these little towns, I could, he could have been over here too, and somewhere in this stretch as well. Down here by Mulberry. But that's about as much of the tracks that run through town. I mean, there's the possibility that he was over here, but if he was over here, I don't see what those grain bins would have been. I just because there's too much bend in the track to account for seeing them from there. But you'd be able to see parts of them from here, from Cherry Street down, and you'd definitely be able to see them all through this whole straight section here. And this is residential. But, I mean, you tell me, what do you think? Yeah. That is the Enfield horror. So, was it a monster? Did they actually see a monster? Yeah, here. I want to say it's like somewhere along here. Between Cherry and the grain. Between Cherry and Beecher. Yeah. You can see the road a little better at this angle. But yeah, it definitely could have been up here too. Alright. Alright. Well, what do you think about the Enfield horror? Was it horrifying enough for you today? Are you terrified? Are you quaking in your boots? Does a kangaroo with pink eyes sound more? Yeah, I am Spider-Gwen. I am Spider-Gwen in another life. Just to let you know. It's my alter ego. Well, yeah, you can go with that. And you want to go follow those links and find out. All right, I am going to wrap up Cryptic Corner here. So you tell me now, what do you think the Enfield horror was? I want to see your answers in the side chat. I want to see your answers in the comments. And while you're down there putting your comment in, hit that subscribe button, hit that little thumbs up thing, and take care and be kind. And we'll see you next time.